Governor Ron DeSantis just signed a bill that could rewrite the rules of money in America. Starting July 2026, Florida residents will be able to use gold and silver coins as legal currency, not as collectibles, not as investments, but as actual money to settle debts, make purchases, and protect wealth. DeSantis says Florida's economy is booming, but he just replaced your dollars with precious metals. This isn't about nostalgia. This is about survival. While Washington drowns in $37 trillion of debt and the Federal Reserve prints money like it's going out of style, Florida is betting on metal that's been trusted for 5,000 years. But here's the problem. Making gold legal tender and making it usable are two very different things. And it's not just Florida watching. Utah, Wyoming, Oklahoma. They've all passed similar laws in recent years, each trying to shield their residents from what they see as federal monetary chaos. It's not a trend, it's a rebellion. These states aren't waiting for Washington to fix inflation or stabilize the dollar. They're building their own financial lifeboats. For Florida, the move is both symbolic and strategic. DeSantis has been vocal about his distrust of federal fiscal policy, calling out reckless spending and what he views as the weaponization of currency through potential central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. He's framing this law as financial sovereignty, a way for Floridians to opt out of a system they believe is rigged against them. The bill, HB 999, lays out specific requirements. Gold coins must be 99.5% pure, silver coins 99.9% pure, and all must be stamped with weight, purity, and mint of origin. Participation is voluntary. Businesses don't have to accept gold or silver as payment, but if they do, those transactions will be exempt from Florida state sales tax. That's a huge incentive for anyone already trading in precious metals. But here's what they're not telling you. This law isn't designed for everyday people to buy groceries with gold coins. It's designed for investors to cash in, literally, by exempting gold and silver transactions from capital gains taxes. Florida just handed the wealthy a massive tax break. If you bought gold at $1,000 an ounce and sell it at $2,000, that $1,000 profit, tax-free in Florida. For the average person working paycheck to paycheck, this law might as well not exist. But for the investor class, it's a gold mine. And that's not a metaphor. The investors know something the public doesn't. Gold and silver have been hammered by inflation fears, geopolitical instability, and a declining dollar. Gold recently hit record highs above $2,400 per ounce. Silver is climbing too. And now, Florida is offering a tax-free playground for anyone who wants to trade these metals without the IRS breathing down their neck, at least on the state level. Federal capital gains taxes still apply, but removing the state burden makes Florida one of the most attractive markets in the country for precious metals. For coin shops and bullion dealers, this is Christmas. Take Coinopia, a Tampa-based coin shop that's been operating for decades. The owner is ecstatic. He's already stocking up on inventory, ordering more gold and silver eagles, buffaloes, and maple leafs. He knows collectors and investors are going to flood his doors once the law takes effect. He's expanding his security systems, hiring additional staff, and preparing for what he hopes will be a surge in business. But here's the catch. He doesn't actually know if customers will use gold and silver as currency or just keep buying them as investments. Nothing says economic freedom like carrying a pound of silver to buy groceries. The practical reality is that most people will continue treating gold and silver as assets, not spending money. The infrastructure to use them as everyday currency simply doesn't exist yet. And building it, that's going to take time, money, and a level of coordination between businesses, banks, and consumers that hasn't happened. Estate planning firms are also jumping in. Lawyers specializing in wealth transfer are advising clients to move more assets into precious metals now that Florida has eased the tax burden. Inheritance laws may become more favorable for passing down gold and silver to heirs without triggering massive tax bills. Insurance companies are developing new policies specifically for precious metal holdings, offering better coverage and lower premiums for Floridians who who store gold and silver in approved facilities. But most people won't see a dime. For retirees, single parents, and working-class Floridians, this law feels abstract at best and elitist at worst. Social Security checks still come in dollars. Medicare premiums are paid in dollars. Rent, utilities, groceries, all in dollars. The law doesn't change any of that. A 72-year-old retiree living on a fixed income in Clearwater supports the idea in principle. She likes the idea of Florida standing up to Washington. She appreciates DeSantis framing this as financial independence. But when it comes to her daily life, she can't afford to convert her savings into gold. She can't pay her bills with silver coins. She supports the idea, but she can't afford to live it. The storage and insurance costs alone are prohibitive for most people. If you want to hold physical gold and silver, you need secure storage. That means a high-quality safe at home, which can cost thousands of dollars, or a safety deposit box at a bank, which runs $50 to $300 per year depending on size and location. Then there's insurance. Standard homeowners policies don't cover large amounts of precious metals. You need specialized coverage, which can cost 1% to 2% of the total value annually. If you're holding $50,000 in gold, that's $500 to $1,000 per year just to insure it. And then there's the volatility. Gold and silver prices fluctuate daily based on global markets, geopolitical events, and currency movements. Imagine your paycheck changing value every hour. That's the reality. For someone on a fixed income, that kind of uncertainty is terrifying, not liberating. You can't budget when your savings might be worth 5% more or 5% less by the end of the week. Most Floridians will never touch this system. They'll read about it in the news, maybe see a segment on local TV, and then go back to their lives. The law offers them nothing tangible. It's a symbolic gesture wrapped in the language of freedom. But without the infrastructure to make it practical, it's just noise. And then there's the business problem. Legal tender, as long as no one actually tenders it. That's the paradox Florida businesses are facing. The law says gold and silver are legal currency, but it doesn't require anyone to accept them. And for good reason, the logistical nightmare of handling precious metals as payment is staggering. Every business would need to verify authenticity, calculate real-time value based on fluctuating spot prices, and maintain separate accounting systems to track these transactions. For a small business operating on thin margins, that's an impossible ask. Let's say you own a small restaurant in Miami. A customer walks in and wants to pay for a $50 meal with a silver coin. First, you need to verify the coin is real, not a counterfeit. That requires specialized equipment, an XRF analyzer, or at minimum, a precise scale and magnet test. That equipment costs anywhere from $500 to $5,000. Then you need to check the current spot price of silver, which changes by the minute. Let's say silver is trading at $30 per ounce. A 1-ounce coin is worth $30, but your meal costs $50. Do you give change in dollars or in fractional silver? How do you make change when silver doesn't come in convenient denominations like paper money? He wants to accept gold, but the system makes it impossible. One small business owner in Jacksonville summed it up perfectly. I love the concept. I support what the governor is doing, but I can't afford the equipment to verify coins, and I can't spend 10 minutes at the register calculating spot prices while my other customers wait. For businesses, accepting gold and silver isn't just about willingness, it's about feasibility. And right now, it's not feasible for the vast majority. Banks are equally hesitant. While the law allows money service businesses like PayPal and check cashing services to transmit payments in precious metals, traditional banks are wary. Handling physical gold and silver creates security risks, requires vault space, and adds regulatory complexity. Most banks are taking a wait-and-see approach, unwilling to invest in infrastructure until they see actual demand. Remember DeSantis? The same governor who promised financial sovereignty is now betting Florida's future on metal. But he's betting on a system that doesn't exist yet. July 2026 is 18 months away. That's 18 months to build a financial system from scratch. Good luck. Florida wants gold as money, but no one's built the system to use it. And that's when the real danger begins. The feds are watching, and they're not happy. The U.S. Constitution grants Congress the sole authority to coin money and regulate its value. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 is crystal clear on this. While states have the power to regulate local commerce, they cannot create their own currency or interfere with federal monetary policy. Florida's law walks a very fine line. By calling gold and silver legal tender, Florida is technically not creating new currency. It's recognizing existing forms of money that the federal government has already minted. But critics argue this is a distinction without a difference. If Florida's experiment succeeds, and gold and silver start competing meaningfully with the U.S. dollar within state borders, federal regulators will step in. The Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, and potentially the Justice Department all have legal grounds to challenge state laws that undermine the dollar's primacy. We've seen this before. In the 1930s, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt took the U.S. off the domestic gold standard, he issued Executive Order 6102, which made it illegal for Americans to own gold. The federal government confiscated private gold holdings in exchange for paper dollars. Could something similar happen again? It's unlikely, but not impossible. That's not theoretical, that's constitutional crisis. Legal experts are divided. Some argue Florida's law is well within state authority because it's voluntary and doesn't mandate the use of gold or silver. Others say any effort to establish an alternative to the dollar, even a state-level alternative, violates the supremacy clause of the Constitution. If a challenge reaches the Supreme Court, the outcome is far from certain. Meanwhile, other states are watching closely. If Florida's law survives federal scrutiny, expect Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, and others to follow suit. If it gets struck down, the entire movement collapses. Florida is the test case. DeSantis is playing high-stakes poker with the federal government, and the chips are Florida's financial future. But the real danger isn't from Washington. Gold and silver are stable stores of value, until they're not. Precious metals have been used as money for millennia precisely because they hold value over time. But over time is the key phrase. In the short term, gold and silver are volatile. In 2020, gold spiked to $2,070 per ounce, then fell to $1,500 by March 2021. Silver swung from $30 to $22 in the same period. Imagine waking up one morning and your bank account is worth 15% less than it was yesterday. That's what happens when your savings are tied to commodities. For businesses, this volatility creates an accounting nightmare. If you accept a gold coin as payment for $2,000 worth of goods, and the price of gold drops 10% the next day, you've lost $200. Multiply that across thousands of transactions, and you're looking at significant financial risk. Businesses operate on predictable margins. Precious metals introduce unpredictability. For consumers, the risk is even worse. If you convert your savings into gold and silver, you're betting that the value will hold or increase. But if a global recession hits, or if inflation subsides, or if new mining technology floods the market with cheap metals, your wealth could evaporate. Florida's betting on the past to save the future. What could go wrong? And Florida's about to find out the hard way. There's also the issue of liquidity. Cash is liquid. You can spend it anywhere, anytime. Gold and silver are not liquid. You can't walk into Walmart and pay with a gold coin. You can't fill up your gas tank with silver. The law creates legal tender status, but it doesn't create practical usability. It's legal tender in name only. Like a trophy, you can't cash. Financial advisors are already warning clients to be cautious. Yes, the tax exemptions are attractive. Yes, owning physical precious metals can be a hedge against catastrophic economic collapse. But putting all your eggs in the gold and silver basket is dangerous. Diversification is still the golden rule of investing. Most advisors are recommending that clients keep no more than 10% to 20% of their portfolios in precious metals, even with the tax benefits. And let's talk about fraud. The precious metals market is rife with counterfeits. Fake gold and silver coins are everywhere, some so sophisticated that even experts have trouble spotting them without specialized equipment. If gold and silver become more widely used as currency, counterfeiters will have a field day. Law enforcement agencies in Florida are already preparing for an uptick in fraud cases once the law takes effect. So Florida's made its move. Now comes the reckoning. If this law succeeds, it could reshape the American financial landscape. Other states will follow. Precious metals could become a genuine alternative to fiat currency, at least at the state level. The movement toward decentralized, state-controlled financial systems would accelerate, challenging federal authority and forcing a national conversation about the role of the dollar in the 21st century. If it fails, Florida will have wasted political capital and given ammunition to critics who argue that these laws are symbolic stunts with no real-world impact. Businesses will have spent money on infrastructure that never gets used. Investors will have moved assets into a market that never materialized. And everyday Floridians will continue living their lives exactly as they did before, wondering what all the fuss was about. The next 18 months will be critical. Florida needs to build the infrastructure, educate the public, and navigate potential federal challenges. Businesses need to decide whether to invest in the systems required to accept gold and silver. Consumers need to decide whether they trust precious metals more than they trust the dollar. And the federal government needs to decide whether to fight or allow the experiment to proceed. DeSantis has framed this as a fight for freedom. His critics call it political theater. The truth is probably somewhere in between. The law creates real opportunities for investors and precious metals dealers. It sends a strong political message about Florida's independence from federal overreach. But for the average Floridian, it changes almost nothing. The question isn't whether Florida's bold, it's whether Florida's reckless. The broader implications extend beyond state borders. If Florida's law survives and thrives, it could accelerate the erosion of the dollar's dominance domestically. Central bankers are already worried about the rise of cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, and alternative payment systems. Adding state-sanctioned precious metals to that mix creates even more fragmentation. Some economists argue this is healthy competition that will force the federal government to maintain a more stable dollar. Others warn it could destabilize the national economy and create a patchwork of incompatible financial systems. History offers lessons. The last time the US had competing currencies was during the free banking era of the 1830s to 1860s, when private banks issued their own banknotes. The result was chaos, wildly fluctuating values, widespread fraud, and economic instability. It took the National Banking Acts of the 1860s to stabilize the system. Are we heading back toward that kind of fragmentation? Or is this time different because states are using federally minted coins, rather than creating entirely new currencies? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Florida has lit a fire that other states are watching closely. If gold and silver reclaim their place as money in the Sunshine State, the ripple effects will be felt nationwide. If they don't, this will go down as one of the boldest and most futile experiments in modern American economic policy. Florida is rewriting the rules of money, but the rulebook isn't finished. Businesses aren't ready, consumers aren't convinced, and the federal government is circling. What happens next will determine whether this is the beginning of a financial revolution or just another headline that fades into history. Will gold and silver reclaim their throne as America's money, or will Florida's bold bet collapse under the weight of logistics, volatility, and federal resistance? The clock is ticking, and July 2026 is closer than you think. The question isn't whether Florida's bold, it's whether they're reckless. Subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking chapter.